All right, so here's the deal. Jason Kelce says lack of accountability is behind the Eagles' struggles. They take on, obviously, the 8-1 Saints this weekend in New Orleans. Darren Woodson, how we doing, my friend?
I'm doing great. How about you?
Oh,
how you doing, Molly?
Oh, I'm fantastic. I'm great. Yeah. Thanks again for coming out to Dallas.
What you got that smile on your ear?
I can't smile. Brother can't come on the show and just show some love.
I mean, you look a little bit too comfortable. I mean, what was it? Because the Cowboys were after stinking up the joint on Monday night like I told y'all they would. They showed up on Sunday and handled their business. Is that what this is about?
No, nothing to do with that. Just showing up.
Don't let them bring you down, okay?
The problem is there is no way to get at Darren sartorially. He's dressed very well, so Stephen A. needed another angle into it.
He came at me. Yeah, I see. I see.
Well, he don't have on blue and gray for a change, so that's good.
No, it's tomorrow. Okay. That's all tomorrow.
All right, Fashion Police, can I ask you a football question?
Sure.
Okay. Do you think it'd actually be a good thing for the Eagles to just get beat down by New Orleans in the Big Easy?
Well, first of all, they are going to get beat down. All right, let's get that out the way. The Eagles.
Well, would it be good?
The Eagles are going to get their butts whipped this weekend. And I think that's going to be the turning point. I think all of this talk, listen, Kelce was absolutely right with what he said about his team and his teammates. Yes, they've had some injuries, but you also had guys that were not prepared to answer the bell and conduct themselves like Super Bowl champions are supposed to conduct themselves. Mindful of the fact that everybody's going to come your way. They're going to bring your A game, and you got to be up for that challenge. And I think the number one culprit in all of this was Doug Peterson. When Doug Peterson comes out weeks ago and says, there's no pressure on us, that is the most idiotic quote that I've ever seen from a Super Bowl championship coach. There's no excuse for something like that. There's always urgency. There's only 16 games in a season. Every week counts. And the fact that you could come out there and say something as asinine as that made no sense to me whatsoever. You stripped the players of the pressure and the level of urgency that automatically comes with being a Super Bowl champion. And you gave them a pass. And it's, figuratively speaking, of course, chickens coming home to roost for you in that regard. Having said all of that, usually a wake-up call is required. And obviously you might lose games, but when you're losing 27-20, or you're winning 24-18, or losing 21-17, even though you gave up a 17-point lead in the fourth quarter to the Panthers, that's not quite the same as getting your butt whipped. That will happen this weekend. The Eagles are going to get stomped by the New Orleans Saints. I told y'all it was going to happen to the Bengals. I'm telling you again, it's going to happen to the Philadelphia Eagles. And then after that, they'll make their run.
Well, I mean, they may win some games because after that, I'm looking at the schedule right now. They have
Giants, Redskins, Cowboys,
Washington's not a tough game. Well, it's the rivalry games, Washington and the Cowboys and the Giants. And when you throw in the Rams, that sounds like 2-2 to me for the Eagles. Like they'll win 2 of the 3 rivalry games. You figure they may lose one, and they'll lose to the Rams. I think that's likely. Then they have the Texans and Washington. Washington also has a bunch of NFC East games coming up, but Washington is 6-3 and the Eagles are 4-5. That's just the reality.
I think the Eagles are going to win about 4 of those 5
games.
They
better. I mean, they need every single win right now in a winnable division. So is this going to be the turnaround game for them? The schedule gets easier when you're not playing the hottest team in football, who also may be the best team in football fundamentally. I mean, they're one of the 2 or 3 on the road. You're likely to lose. And then after that, the schedule gets better, but they need every single win, including this one.
Absolutely. This is a huge game for them. And I know everybody's talking about they're going to go up to New Orleans and they're going to get beat down, like Stephen A. said. But, hey, listen, they still got to play this game. And for the Eagles, you're trying to win every single game. And I get where Doug Peterson's going. Stephen, I absolutely agree with what he said. I don't think it's an idiotic statement for him to make. I think he's been a relaxed coach. He's been a player's coach, and they've loved the way that he's coached this football team from a player's standpoint because he feels their needs and he understands it. So he didn't want to put pressure on them. At the same time, when he made the statement, he was like, hey, listen, we need to play our game. No more added pressure.
How can
Let's
you
just
say
play
that?
Our game. Because I've been on that end.
That's what I'm saying. You have been on the end. I thought I was talking to a champion. I was talking to a champion that accepts the challenge of being a champion as opposed to passing the buck and acting like there's no pressure.
But this is not me. I mean, we're not talking mediocrity. We're talking about the defending champions.
Right.
Philadelphia Eagles. I've been on the team with Jimmy Johnson as a head coach, and we all know how hardcore Jimmy Johnson was. And there were times he would come in after a loss and say, hey, take the day off. take the day off. Let's get away from it. Don't worry about it. Relax. Everything's going to be fine. It's being a psychologist at the same time. It's being a psychologist at the same time, being a counselor, counseling your team just to relax, take the stress
Peterson's
off,
already won half as many Super Bowls as Jimmy Johnson, by the way. Peterson's a Super Bowl champion coach. And incidentally, Stephen, I'm with Darren on this as far as this goes. Yeah, of course, Jason Kelce has to say next man up and all that. What else are you supposed to say? Well, how else are you supposed to think if you're trying to win? Their tackles have been hurt all year.
Absolutely.
All of their running backs are gone. They lost their OC and their quarterback coach.
Clement and Wendell Smallwood were there last year. Nelson Aguilar and Alshon Jeffries was there last year.
I'm talking
Zach
about
Ertz, I know
backs.
that. I mentioned the first two names I gave you were running backs.
Not
you got the two wide receivers. You got Zach Ertz. Listen, Peters and Lane, you've been on that for a long time, and you're absolutely right. I get all of that. But still in all, we've seen the Eagles come up with a myriad of ways to lose games this year.
What I'm saying is when you elevate your receivers coach to offensive coordinator, guess what? Maybe you use your two tight ends as well as you should. I mean, there are a million reasons that the Eagles aren't doing well. Super Bowl hangover, which is really what you're alluding to, I believe is part of it, but actually personnel is a huge part of this.
It's a huge part of this. And we're, again, dealing with tackles that are banged up, dealing with the running backs that are banged. Sproles hasn't even played this year. I mean, there's so many guys on this football team that aren't injured, haven't been able to play at their highest level, and they're playing with backups at crucial times. So I get it, man. Listen, it's a part of it. Players win games, and you need the personnel to win those games, and they just don't have the personnel to match. So I understand Peterson saying, hey, man, just relax.
I respectfully disagree with you. Listen, I didn't play, you did. You're the Super Bowl champion. I know my place, but I got to tell you, I respectfully disagree in that regard, Darren, because I look at it and I say to myself, excuse me, if you were losing one definitive way, that would be different. Every week they lost a different way.
Yeah.
You see, and that's my problem with them. So in other words, there's holes every damn place, shore up something, and then when you sit up there and you say, well, you know what? We don't have any pressure whatsoever. Just go out there and play. It's not a big deal. Excuse me. Okay, they treated it like that. How has that worked for you? Carson Wentz taking the ball out of his hands. We talk about Carson Wentz, and we've forgotten that this was a league MVP candidate before he goes down last year. He comes back after the first 2 or 3 games this year. He's completing 71% of his passes.
Let's talk about something that'll make you smile.
Why are you taking the ball out of his hands for?
Let's turn to something positive.
Go ahead.
America's team.
Go ahead, Molly. Go ahead, Molly. That's what I'm talking about.
Last year, the Falcons handed the Cowboys a 27-7 loss and sacked Dak Prescott a career-high 8 times. This year, both teams enter their game Sunday in Atlanta at 4-5. Let me remind you, only 8% of teams make the playoffs when they go to 4-6. Max, who needs this win more? Dallas or Atlanta?
In fact, it's the Falcons. And even though I just got finished talking about how the Eagles need every single win, and the same would be true for the Cowboys, right, if you want to make the playoffs, which I don't think the Cowboys will do, but, you know, they got a shot. Falcons simply need the wins more if they want to make the playoffs. They have 2 teams ahead of them, and one of them, as I just said, is the hottest team in football, and maybe the best team in football. Certainly one of the best handful of teams in football. Falcons are a talented team, more talented than the Cowboys, I think. But they're in a tougher division, so they need to win more. It's that simple.
Are you ready for this, Darren? Are you listening to me, Darren, loud and clear?
I'm with you.
The Dallas Cowboys will lose 3 of their next 4 games. 3 of their next 4. They got a road game against Atlanta, and then they got home games against Washington, New Orleans, and a Philadelphia Eagles squad that they just beat that ain't losing to them 2 times in the same season. Okay? So I'm thinking you're going to lose to Atlanta. You ain't going to Atlanta and winning that game. I don't believe it. Okay? All right. Washington, I think Washington might have a shot, but could you beat them? You damn sure ain't beating New Orleans. You can scratch that dream. That ain't happening, and the Philadelphia Eagles would avenge their loss. I think that after, what is this? With 3 games left in the season, week 14 or whatever, I think the Dallas Cowboys are going to be 5-8 Okay, that's what their record is going to be. They're going down. It's not going to work for them. All you can sit there and celebrate them beating the Eagles Sunday night all you want to with their lucky selves. They are going down. You can book it. Atlanta's offense is going to answer the bell. New Orleans offense is going to answer the bell. And a familiar foe in Washington and Philadelphia, they ain't winning both divisional games. They're going to lose one of those games. You could book it.
Okay, hey, you picked Philly to win the division, right? I'm just asking.
Unfortunately, yes.
You did.
At the beginning of the season. At the beginning of the season, I did.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, did you pick the Redskins?
No. And you picked,
did you pick the Redskins?
No. Well, you picked Philly to beat Dallas last week, too, right?
All right, dude. Did you pick Dallas?
No, I'm just asking. I'm asking you the question.
Yes, I
You
did.
know what, Darren?
Okay, you
I appreciate
did.
you holding the guys accountable.
But now
it's important to do that.
But now you're predicting the rest of the schedule.
Really, Catwoman?
I was told.
Really?
What?
I was told.
What is
Why am I
she?
Catwoman?
I got Catwoman
because
glasses.
Catwoman's a big
Actually,
compliment.
it's my phone.
Here's my
Julie
question.
Newmar.
Here's my
That's
question.
how I go back with Catwoman, huh?
Come on, here's my question. Can I get back in
Calm
this?
down. Earth the Kid is,
All right,
Go, Darren, Darren,
So
go.
who needs
I'm
the game
listening.
more? Who needs the game more? Who needs to win this game more, Stephen A? You didn't answer. I know Max answered it. So-
I would say to you the Falcons need it more.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting. Listen, I think the Falcons do need this game, but I'm going to say this. I think the Cowboys need this game more, and this is why. They need to separate themselves from the Philadelphia Eagles. Completely separate themselves. So if they've already beat the Eagles, they have to get back and beat the Redskins. The Redskins have already beaten them earlier in this season. The NFC East right now, as good as the Redskins are playing at 6-3, it's wide open. Anyone can, those three teams can still win this game. It's still open. In the NFC South, you better believe, listen, New Orleans Saints are 8-1, and no one is overtaking them. You better, it's a race between the Atlanta Falcons and the Carolina Panthers in second place. The NFC East right now, as we speak, can be won by the Dallas Cowboys or the Philadelphia Eagles. I think the Cowboys need this even more, much more than the Atlanta Falcons. They need this game.
You diluted your own argument. Because it's so close, because it's the NFC East, the Dallas Cowboys conceivably could lose this game and still have a shot at the NFC East. In the case of the Atlanta Falcons, because the Saints are clearly going to win that division,
You're
the
playing
Atlanta
for a wild
Falcons
card.
you're playing for a wild card spot. So it's more important for them.
I get it. But what is your goal as a football team? I'm talking from a football mindset and a player's mindset. Your goal going to every season, win your division. That is a mindset. That is what you go in every year.
That clearly hasn't been a priority for the Dallas Cowboys for most of the last quarter century. That ain't an argument to you.
But that's what you want to do.
Darren, we've seen wild cards win Super Bowls. You know,
that's true.
That's not uncommon.
That's true. I get that part. But there is something about the confidence builder when you walk in that locker room. And if you talk to anyone, Doug Peterson with the Philadelphia Eagles, the Giants, you talk to the Redskins, their goal in mind, win the East, and then find yourself in the playoff. You control your destiny then. But it's not about winning, trying to be a wild card team. Take care of your business. That's what the Cowboys have the chance to do. That's what the Philadelphia Eagles still have a chance to do. I think the Cowboys and the NFC East is wide open. I think the Cowboys have they have to win this football game.
Oh, please.
Darren, I appreciate you. Thank you for keeping Stephen A in check. I need help.
I love you guys.
Keep
I
him
love
right.
y'all.